I'm going to do a real quick overview of HB1107, which is now the law that I think all of us are used to hearing as far as the new school governance structure in Prince George's County. And I'm going to go fast. I apologize. I didn't see Board Chair Regina Jacobs. I just caught you. I got my glasses on. Thank Board Chair Regina Jacobs coming out as well. I don't have my glasses. That's what I get. So HB 1107 I'm going to go real quick in this. I'm going to get to Mr. Baker. HB 1107 basically has two main functions. One, it creates a new process to select a CEO, superintendent in Prince George's County. And the second, it creates a hybrid school board in Prince George's County. The first part is probably the most important part as it relates to the CEO selection. So the CEO selection, the name was changed, the Chief Executive Officer for Prince George's County Public Schools. That CEO selection will now be ultimately selected by the county executive. The governor appointed two people, the state superintendent appointed one person to form a search committee, a three-person search committee, all county residents. And I want to thank Dr. Charlene Dukes, president of Prince George's Community College, for serving as chair of that committee. That committee will begin their work on June 1st, their formal work on June 1st, and they will have the opportunity of working with the search firm that the Board of Education used previously to not start at zero, to start closer to 75 and 80%. So this process hopefully can be expedited and we can find the right candidate for Prince George's County Public Schools. The second part, which is important, is the creation of a hybrid school board. Now, currently we have 9 elected members to the school board. That does not change at all. 9 elected members, each are going to represent their same districts. That does not change at all. However, the hybrid structure adds 4 new members to the school board. 3 of those members will be selected by the county executive, and 1 will be selected by the county council. The county council will select a parent that's currently has a student currently in the school system. That's different than what we've had before. So normally before we've had just the elections, non-elected school board members, anyone, no matter what the criteria, could run. It didn't matter, and that was actually a great thing. But part of this conversation from HB 1107 the county executive led was hearing from board members, hearing from community about certain expertise or certain criteria that they would like to see on the school board. So a parent in the school system is one that the county council will actually have that pick. Now, the county executive has the ability to select a number of people, 3 people ultimately. Those people are, as someone who has a background in education, the actual law says a high knowledge or expertise in education. Second is a very confusing one for those taking notes. In the legislative sausage-making process, they lumped in about a category that is pretty large. So it's business, finance, or higher education. If you all remember, and I think it's important to say, HB 1107 did not start the way it ended. The bill initially was proposed by the county executive, had a number of major changes. One, the county executive and the CEO report directly to the CEO report directly to the county executive. And we also had a provision that was actually unique, innovative, an idea that we thought was great, and several legislators thought it was great as well, which was having higher education represented on our Board of Education. While we ultimately did not finalize that process where we had 3 ex officio members serving as policy analysts, so to speak, the legislature thought it was good to keep that provision in there. So that's why higher ed is included with business and finance. And the last category is someone who has experience in management. And management can be public sector, private sector, or nonprofit. And the goal there was specific expertise that we heard from the public, we heard from board members, and we heard from constituents that they wanted represented on their board. So again, I'm talking fast, so I want to get to the start of the show. I thought you would say, I know you don't say Mr. Baker, but the start of the show. But I want to make sure that I at least do it as good of a job quickly as possible around the 2 main provisions in the bill. Now, it's important for me to say, and I think this is critically important, that we also made in the legislation a lot of the legalese language. We really did beef up the role of the superintendent, and we clarified, in our opinion, the role of the Board of Education. So the Board of Education has 2 main functions in this bill. 1 is to improve student achievement, and 2 is to improve parental engagement. Those are the 2 main functions that this board currently has. Now, it's important to recognize that they still have budget development, they still have contract negotiations with labor. Those things did not change, but in the clarification of the role, at least from our perspective from the board, those are the 2 main functions. Now, for the CEO, for the superintendent, We did do a lot of work, and thank the legislature for their ability to kind of cut through all the back and forth and find a way to put a bill out. And that bill really gives the CEO powers that no other superintendent or CEO in the state of Maryland will have. They will have the ability to run the school system on a day-to-day. It's a risk, but it's a risk that the county executive believe we need it when you have a superintendent that you're paying $250,000, $300,000 to run a $1.7 billion business. You have to allow them the ability to do so. So we beefed up their ability. We gave the CEO a lot more power. However, we provided, at least in our opinion, some checks and balances to those powers. So one, if the Board of Education, the new formal board, has a problem or wants to overturn the decision of a superintendent, they can do so, but it's a higher threshold. It's a 2/3 majority instead of just a simple majority. In addition to that, there are some pieces, and I want to clear it up right now before maybe it's a question that will come later. Part of the provision around school closures and school boundaries, and I think this is important to clear up. So school closure is a politically hot topic. It's a topic that no one wants to deal with. However, sometimes, and we're not saying it's important for this particular case, but sometimes it's a needed conversation, particularly when you have enrollment that's 1,000. We're losing 1,000 kids each year. When you have empty buildings and the efficiency of resources, that conversation is needed. The superintendent/CEO in this case has the ability to do so. I want to be clear that that process would not go just by himself as a dictator, but most likely, and almost with the urging of the county executive and several other electeds in this room and other rooms, would make sure public has a say in that conversation. But here's a more real conversation that happens almost every single year, which are school boundaries. So school closures do not happen every year. They happen as kind of a buildup, and I think in the legislation, we actually provide for a report to be done around a utilization study so that it just doesn't happen arbitrarily, but there's a utilization study that says, are we using our buildings effectively and efficiently? I apologize. However, school boundaries is a year-to-year conversation. I think many of you may have dealt with that at some point as parents or grandparents, guardians, or even as former board members or elected officials. School boundaries is a real issue, and that issue stays completely within the purview of the Board of Education. That is not just a decision made by the CEO. It's actually still within the purview of the board. So there's a number, the bill changed a lot and did a number of things, but ultimately we ended up where we were. And at the bare minimum, our goal is to, and I'll let the county executive complete this sentence, but our goal ultimately is to make sure that we find a CEO that is someone who's committed to Prince George's County, that will stay in Prince George's County, that can lead Prince George's County. And secondly, that we work together with the non-elected members of the board and the new hybrid board members to make sure we serve our students the best. So with that, I'm going to bring to the podium/stool our county executive, the Honorable Rasharnell Baker III.
Thank you, Kristen. I feel like a talk show host. Is this working? Can you hear me now? Christian did a good job. Can we give him a round of applause, please? I'm sorry. Are you signaling to me or someone else? Oh, yeah, there are seats over here, please. We didn't expect such a large crowd. I think Christian did a pretty good job explaining the bill, but let me do this before I start, and I'll be very brief because I want to get to your questions. The legislators in the room, could you stand up? All the people from Annapolis. If you're still here at South Carolina, can you give them a round of applause? We would not have the legislation had they not been willing to take the risk that I asked them to and employed them to in the middle of the session. So everywhere I've gone, I've explained this to them. People have, whether you agree or disagree with the bill, people said, why did you put it in the last 30 days or last week of it? I have been very upfront and said, you know what, that is the one criticism that's absolutely correct. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would have put it in the beginning of the session. Or I probably would have put it in at the beginning of this administration. But I felt like if we're going to bring in a new superintendent, and I didn't feel the governance structure was the type of governance structure that would move Prince George's County forward, then either I was going to change that governance structure now, or for the next 4 years, I had to let that individual run the school system the best way that they can. and I felt like it was really important for us to get it right. And I also felt it was important that I do it before the election. Because one of the things that, politicians are good at, and that is they wait until they're reelected, and then they do all the things they didn't want to do during the first term before you had a chance to get rid of them. So if I'm wrong, come next year in June, you have the ability to send me home. And that's the way it should be. Because all of us who hold these offices are really using our best guess. We get all the information we can from all the experts that we can get to come help us out. But in the end, we make a guess that this is what's going to be in the best interest of the county. At the end of the day, you're the judge and jury as to whether that guess is right. So one, the person who comes in should be allowed to run the school system during their term here, which is a 4-year contract. Two, you should be allowed to judge whether I made the right decision and whether somebody else should hold this position. So that's the reason I put the legislation in when I did. The legislature took a chance and agreed with me. I also want to thank the chair of the board, Renita Jacobs, who has done a great job as the chair, and really we had a unity breakfast and bringing all this together after all the the back and forth, and I think she deserves a round of applause. And so the essence of the bill is this. For the first time in the history of Prince George's County, and probably for the first time in the history of Maryland, the county executive and the county council don't just have the authority to delegate the budget to the school board. When we give them the budget, we've done our job. Unfortunately for them, they have the budget and they have all of the accountability and all of the responsibility. It's unfair to them. So for the first time, I have volunteered the county council to share their responsibility for improving education and to put their careers on the line. And I have volunteered me and my executive staff for the same thing. We're going to improve education in Prince George's County. We're going to build upon the gains that we've been making. But at the end of the day, if we are not doing the job correctly, you won't have to go very far to know who's in charge or who's responsible. Because for the first time, the county executive has the budget and the accountability. That's also the way it should be. So tonight, what we want to do is hear back from you as to, we got two important things that we have to do right away. One is pick a new superintendent. I'm glad Dr. Dukes also volunteered. Or were you drafted? Dr. Dukes, I do a lot of drafting these days. Dr. Dukes is chairing the 3-member panel that's going to interview candidates for superintendent, send 3 names down to me, and I've got to make a decision based on your comments to us tonight, based on input from board members, based on input from incoming board members, and do my best to choose someone who's going to come to this system, be dynamic, and stay. The other thing is, and this also caught us by surprise, there are 4 new appointments to the board, and that is to add to what the 9 members have been doing. It is to augment their work. And so I have to make 3 appointments, and the council has to make 1. So we've got to go through the millions of, or the 100 and, how many? 160 applications of some very good qualified people who are in this room tonight, and choose 3 individuals from the county executive's office and 1 from the council. And so that's what we're going to do. But no matter what, someone said this to me in Annapolis, no matter what happens, whether you were for the bill or whether you were against the bill, this conversation in Annapolis was around education for the first time in Prince George's County in years. Not just around how much money we put into education, but whether in fact what takes place, what structure, what academics can actually improve education in Prince George's County. Because we're unique. We are the only other place where education income went up, but yet our status in the state of Maryland, which is a great education system, remain the same. It means there's a lot of talented people, a lot of committed people who aren't putting their children in our school system. It means there are a lot of talented and committed teachers and principals who are leaving our school system for various reasons. Whatever those are, we've got to figure it out. We've got to figure out how to retain them here. We've got to figure out how to get parents to take a chance on our school system. It's a great school system. All 3 of my children went through it. They all went to college. 2 of them got full scholarships. It was the work of the school system that did that. But we've got to instill people. So tonight it is about your questions, how we move it forward. And I know that, judging from the crowd here, that, we're going to move this school system forward, and it's going to be great for Prince George's County. With that, I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you. And this is from the board's perspective, they have done the best job that they can. I mean, they were working hard. So just think about it. If you're in a situation where you know you're working as hard as you possibly can, and then somebody comes in and says, we want to change it. Would you be happy about that? No. And so for very good reason, if they're doing everything and they say, well, if I just had more resources to do X, Y, and Z, then that's really what I need. Believe it or not, this legislation had very little to do with the individuals on the Board of Education. It had more to do with what structure would work best for Prince George's County, not for every school system in the nation, not even for the ones in the other parts of the state. But how do we make sure we augment the talent that's on the board with other individuals that will add to it? So that's why the hybrid for us was a good notion. And I think in the end it will work well. That's why there are categories of people we ask to go onto the board. So it's not just generally, Rashawn, find some friends. If I have any. No. But it was here in these areas where we think you can add to what we're already doing, and that was the idea.
Do you, and don't forget, you can identify yourself if you like. Do you?
You know the question is yours.
Well, they might want to be anonymous. Okay, I'm going to read them as close to the.
Transparent government. All right.
All right.
We all in this together.
Do you expect the board members you appoint to consult with you regularly or to exercise independence of judgment?
Ooh, independent of judgment. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that question. Did you apply for the school board? Would you do that? Would you independently, just come over and ask me what I think before you made a decision?
I would not do that as a matter of course. It's some rare, exceptional opinion. Normally, I don't think it would be appropriate.
You know what, Mark? That is a great answer. And it's the correct answer. No, what we want is, and those of you who applied for the school board, and those of you who have an interest, the reason your name is going to the school board and not Rashawn Baker is because I recognize my expertise in education on my 3 children. That's it. And if anybody ever dealt me when my baby was in there, who just graduated last year, know that I am very unreasonable when it comes to my baby. I think everything she does is perfect. And I don't know why y'all don't give her no A. But the seriousness of it is we're picking individuals who bring that expertise that they have to the board and use that to move the school system. It's not me. This is not the Rashawn Baker school system. It is not the county executive school system. You don't work for the county executive. It is the people of Prince George's County gave me the right, and they can take it away, to appoint the best people that give the judgment for Prince George's County. Because the decisions you're going to make on that board, if you're applying for the school board and you think, well, hey, I'm going to call up the county executive and ask him what he thinks, then I'm going to be trying to find a way to get somebody else. It is your expertise to move this school system. You're going to have an impact on this county far past my term as county executive. And I'm going to be here. So I want you to make the best decision possible because I can't afford to move. My neighbors are here. They know I can't afford to move.
We had a couple of questions about long-term, short-term expectations and correction of failures. And so I think that this one captures it best. What is your measure for success and what is your time frame for improvement?
Henry, thank you for that question. What is my measure for success and time frame? Time frame was yesterday. And I mean that sincerely. Anybody who are parents here? I got people in school. There you go. Parents. Grandparents, that's right. Uncles, people who have children in there that you call extended family, you know, all those. You want it to happen yesterday for your child. The people we want to see go on the school board and the things that we're going to do in this administration is a sense of urgency. I tell them all the time, we run this government as if your mother, your child, your relative, they're the ones we're dealing with. And so we want it to happen yesterday. What would I see as improvement? It is no, and I mean this in all seriousness, we could move this school system up at least into the middle of the pack within the next 4 years if we do a couple of things right. And a lot of those things have nothing to do with the school system as it currently is. It has a lot to do with how the government comes in and intervenes in what's going on in the life of the children that we have. We have this thing, I'll give you a quick example, called Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative, where we targeted 6 areas in this county where every indicator is going down. Part of those indicators are dropout rates for our kids, truancy rates. If we focus resource, time, and talent on those 6 areas the same way we do with any other part, but with urgency, we can turn this county around. We've seen it in public safety. We can see it in our schools. So the same way we got to look with a sense of urgency, how do we bring in the resources that currently aren't there in the school system, but are in another part of our government?
This question relates to partnerships. It says, I would like to know more about how you plan to leverage community partnerships to fill academic voids, specifically as it relates to the IB curriculum and the Common Core model that include multiple languages as part of instruction.
Oh, and your name is? Oh, terrific. That's a great question. And we'll be talking to you about how we do that, because you're absolutely right. I mean, what it is how do we, one of the things that will actually turn around in any school system or any good school, and we have great schools here in Prince George's County. But if you ever notice what is a common theme in those great schools is, one, there's community involvement, which means there's also business involvement. So if you notice, look at the people that I put there. What's a politically correct way of saying it? That I asked them to come with us. That's how I say it. But look, it's the county council, it's the state legislature, both the House and the Senate, it's county executive's office, the school board, the business community, and parents. All of them have a stake or a part of this bill. All of them had a role in helping us shape it. So all of them are responsible. But those are the things that we have to do at an individual school level. So how do we get greater, not just greater parental involvement, but greater business involvement and partnership in a real and substantive way? Not just you write a check, but how do we get you to actually go in and to adopt a class the same way as if that child in that class was yours? A real substantive way. How do we have parental involvement, and how do we teach parents how to be involved? Not just how to deal with their child at home, but how to advocate for themselves. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at, because those are the things, if you look at great school system, they do.
How can you address the lack of adequate health care some of our students are facing, and how does this situation hinder their academic performance in the classroom?
Betty Francis here. Oh, you asked that question? That is great. Your name? And what's your background? Terrific. I think that's a great question. The reason I said Betty Francis is our Deputy CAO for Health and Human Services. Health is a big component of what's going on in our education system. And but that's not controlled by the school system. The health office and the family services and social services are all part of the county government. So how do we integrate that into the school system in a substantive and helpful way? And so part of what we're doing, and we're actually doing this now with the school system, with the Dream Team, which is working with the leadership at the school level and the county executive's office, and working with our social service agency. So we're looking at now providing social workers in the school system that's actually coming from the executive office, so not out of the budget of the school system. We're doing the same thing with family services to provide dental and health care. But also a big part of what I'd like to see us do is provide more counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists to our kids. That is a huge part of the budget that the school system can't take on its own. But we have to actually play a role in that, because I think, like, this administration has made healthcare our number 3 issue for our county. It's education, public safety, and healthcare. So everybody said, well, that's crazy. Why did you put healthcare and not economic development? Because health has an impact on education and public safety. We look at the problems, it all goes back to that. So we're going to do a greater collaboration, and we're starting to do that now, and that's one of the good things that's coming out of this. We have the mobile health units that, Betty Francis would be mad if I didn't say this, we went from 1 to 8 that now serve.
We went from 1 mobile health care unit to 8 that serve about 40 or so schools. And in dental units, we went from a spotty approach, kind of a franchise approach. Principal here would say yes to every single school in the county now receiving free dental care through a vote.
Yes. That's a great accomplishment.
How are you going to close the gap with the Latino community? They seem to be underrepresented.
That's another. So all of these are great questions. Who gave us that question? Right. Thank you. Your name is? Francisco. Thank you for that question. It's a big concern. Not only in terms of us making sure that we're actually getting teachers that are bilingual, because we need it throughout the county. It's not just one part of the county. It's actually throughout. We also need to make sure, and we have to look outside of Prince George's County, but actually there are schools in Prince George's County that are doing an excellent job in closing the achievement gap and making progress. So we've got to look at how we replicate those best practices that we're already doing in the county everywhere in the county. I'm good for saying that, the county does great work every day. The school system just doesn't do it everywhere. And our job is to make sure that every single school we have has that. But we're going to look at some of the models that we have in Prince George's County that are working, some of the models in places like Montgomery County, which you have to give them credit. They've done a good job with it. And some models that we've seen in New York and in California. So that's the way we do it. But once we find a model that we think will work for us, we've got to scale it up. Sometimes we'll just, have it at an elementary school, but we don't track it to middle school and to high school. So you got to scale it up until you see it, and you got to be willing to stick with it. And so that's one of the things that we're going to look at.
What is your vision for increasing the employment options for high school students that are not college material or who don't want to attend college but wish to enter the job market with a skill or trade? And that is from Ingrid Valentine Giraldo.
Mr. Giraldo, how are you doing? Did you want to stand up and let everybody say hi to you? You're good. You're good. One of the things, and I think we've started on this path in the school system. I know that from Dr. Daisy to Dr. Height and to now, that we want our children to be career ready and college ready. Once again, we have some programs that are great. You know, we have some of we went to Crossland and we watched some of the things that they were doing around, what's the beautician, they do great, the culinary arts. But also they had like the #1 bricklayer, this guy who won national stuff where he could really just, build these expensive, stoves and stuffs and housing. And so what we have to do is look at what careers are out there and how do we make sure we bring the best to those programs, that the materials are the best, and that people know about it. Sometimes we do stuff really, really well, and no one takes advantage of it. There's a program at Suitland, the visual and performing arts everyone knows about. But there was one for, was it the healthcare that we had at Suitland? Or was it?
Well, Suitland has a number of academies.
Cisco IT Academy. That's the one that I saw that I had no clue that was there, and I'd been in that school with all of my children, but they do a great job. So some of these programs that actually, so our children can walk right out and get a job, that we have to look at how we can actually, once again, scale those up. We can't do it everywhere, so we've got to make sure we have the ability to have our children come to these specialized programs and attract in. One of the things that we're working on now, that we started working with Dr. Height, was cybersecurity and working with Fairmont Heights High School, which is another good example of how we use resources that are not coming from the school budget. In order to do the one at Fairmont Heights High School, what we decided to do is we had the private sector involved, Lockheed Martin, Cisco.
We also had a number of other kind of smaller local businesses involved,
and then from the county executive's office, we actually use our economic development money because we're creating jobs, and we're creating jobs with inside areas that we want to see grow. So it's doing that combination of things.
We talked a little bit about middle college, and I know that the wait list is quite popular or filled for that. So this question addresses, if we would like our children to be college ready, why aren't we setting up our high schools more like colleges? And I guess their question would follow up with, is this something that you would like to see?
That's a good question. I think the way that we certainly want to not only that they're getting the academic instructions inside the classroom, but the ability to know how to study once they leave outside the classroom. So a lot of that has to do with two things. The amount of time not only they spend in a school library, but the reason we built this facility right here, and if you look at it, if you go downstairs, it looks very much like if you were on a college campus. So you have the individual rooms. The idea is, how do we integrate our library system and our education system so that we teach our children how to study independently? How do we make sure that, especially in this age when they've got all these things in front of them, and then when they go away to college, they don't know how to really study and get out of their room and go into a library and sit down or to do research. So we need to make sure that we're actually integrating what's going on in the school with what's going on with the rest of the county. And I think that's a part that really is on us as a government. So we're going to think of different ways on how we can work together to make that happen. You're absolutely right. One of the biggest frustrations I know we have in Annapolis is we actually come up, and that's one of the reasons we're having this meeting tonight, is those of us who don't teach at all come up with legislation to tell you how to teach. Really. Those of us who have never run a classroom will tell you how much money you need to run a classroom. But we've never once asked you and incorporated that in to how we do the budget, or how we do, how do we help you do your job better? That's the same way government is. One of the first things that we did in this government, and our CAO did it, and that is he wanted to figure out a way, how do we get feedback from every single person that works for Prince George's County government, which to all of us sounded like a crazy idea. Because it would mean, how do you contact every single person? Well, he figured out a way to do that. But the idea was from everybody who worked in our government, in our building, they actually had a chance to give us their feedback on our mission statement, our vision statement, and principles. Everybody got their information looked at, evaluated, and added to. And then we came up with a way that it was ongoing, so there's no retribution. Because every comment, every suggestion has merit. You have to consider everything before you disregard it. So we have to figure out a way that teachers and principals, we had a group of principals the other night who didn't want to identify themselves as they were asking questions. And that's not, this is open government, this is transparent government. This is about, because we can't fix problems if we don't know what they are. We can't fix problems. I tell people that all the time. I can't fix it if I don't know about it. If I see you walking out the door, going somewhere else, and we don't do an exit interview as to why you left, or we don't go to the other place and figure out how did they actually come and recruit you and get you to go there, and what are they doing over there that makes you want to stay in that system? Or right here in Prince George's County, there are places where teachers have worked for the last 20 years under the same principal. If a principal is able to keep all of those teachers for a length of time, that person is doing something right. Because in 20 years, you got an option to go somewhere else, and you chose to stay. So we need to look at that, but we also need to make sure there's a feedback. So that starts, quite honestly, that starts at the top with the superintendent. So it means that the person I select, if they're not open, if they're not willing to hear, if they come in and say, I know all the answers, I've been, a superintendent X, Y, and Z for the last 400 years, there ain't no good ideas that I haven't thought of. If that person comes here in Prince George's County, it's my fault. It means I didn't ask the right questions. It really does, because the only way, and then if I pick a person who understands and does not have the ability to have that trickle down to everybody, not just the teachers, but the cafeteria workers, the bus drivers, everybody, because you need everybody to make it work. So that means I need a person in there, and that's got to be question number one for somebody who's helping me with those questions for superintendent, is how do you do that? And we got to look at their record. Because if they tell you, yeah, I'm going to do that, and you look at the record and they ain't done that, what makes you think they're going to do that now? Especially if they're over 35. We are who we are after 35. That's a side comment. Don't.
Okay. We have two last questions, and we're going to give Mr. Baker a minute to breathe. Christian will address some specific housekeeping type of questions that you've asked relating to the board structure, and then we'll have a conversation with Mr. Baker should you have something on the top of your head. So next to the last question, Mr. Baker, is do you have a plan to provide a safer environment within the school system, not just the students, but for teachers as well?
That's a great another great question. We are right now working with the school system's security system, and they're working with Chief McGall in our office and with Barry Stanton from the county executive's office, so that we not only make the school itself safe, which we do a really good job. Believe it or not, I mean, we do a good job. But what the school system doesn't control is the perimeter once you leave out of campus. And so what has to happen, and one of the reasons that we asked the police to go back into our schools was so that we could have that continuum of police presence. They have more resources than the resource officers for the school system. They also have more resources than our sheriff's department, which do a great job and partner with us. But what they're looking at now is to make sure our surrounding areas where our kids are coming back and forth from is as safe as it possibly can be, and that we have presence there. And so we are actually working on a plan to make sure that that we do that.
And just to add two pieces to that. One, and the county executive mentioned it, but I need to give the official term, school resource officers. So there was a distinct policy decision that the county executive made as soon as he took office, actually 2.5 years ago, to put police officers back in, or the police department back into schools. Currently, prior to that, the sheriff's department was in schools. And while the sheriff's department was able to maintain the perimeter, their ability to go outside of those walls, they don't arrest individuals. They serve warrants. That's their sole function, along with protecting our courthouses. So what the county executive did was say we need to put the police department back in because they have intel inside of schools and outside. Here's an example: Northwestern High School, one of the largest high schools in the state. That school is larger than a lot of our communities. You got about 2,000, 2,200 students that are at one location for about 8 hours a day. That school resource officer has the ability to work within that community, find out where those raves are, find out where the big skipping party is, but also communicate with other layers of government. The second piece from school safety, and I'll just use an example that isn't publicized, but I think it's worth saying publicly. The county executive's office and the school board have been working together and actually both put up money to put new radios on all the school buses. The difference in what we're doing in Prince George's County, almost any other place in the country, is that the bus drivers, the principal, and the police department are all on the same channel. Normally, school buses have their own channel, the police department is separate. So if there's an accident or there's a disruption, whatever it is, you got to figure out who to call. Now, for the first time, hopefully beginning of next school year, there'll be an ability for the principal. I think if you ever had your kid not get picked up or dropped off the wrong place, you call the principal, they don't know where the bus driver is. They got to call central office, and they got to call so-and-so and so-and-so. This allows for more ability to work together, and that's actually part of public safety, what we call public safety communication. So those are examples of collaboration that we're talking about.
Where's Barry? Last question before the housekeeping talk. You have mentioned some very good things happening in Prince George's County. Are we marketing any of these things to other areas and effectively promoting them here at home?
Barry Hudson is so glad that you asked that question. Who asked that question? Over here. Oh, hey, Yvette, how are you doing? Good. Barry, come on over here. Tell them what we're doing. This is Barry Hudson. He did not go to school in Prince George's County, so be easy on him. It's marketing. What are we doing to work with the school?
Good evening, and I'm not the county executive's brother. Okay, so there are a couple of things that we're doing, and we're probably tipping our hat a little bit, but we'll have a new website which will bear our new brand coming up in about a month. But we also, for the last 2 years, have been working very heavily on a new brand for the county. And the brand really would be kind of like your Virginia's for Lovers, I Love New York kind of piece. Something that's really focused on making sure that the residents of Prince George County feel that pride, something that makes sure that the business community sees that pride, and frankly also brings visitors. There are a lot of visitor attractions in the county, although everybody doesn't really realize it. I mean, the amusement park is is the largest in the state. There's not another one closer that's larger than, I think Kingston Million is probably the closest one. So there is a number of things that we are doing to do that, and through our office, we're also doing as much as possible working with the media and the great things that are going on in the community, making sure that, as our council chair says, we try to tell the story of Prince George's County. There are a lot of good stories in the communities all over this county that Scott Peterson, I think he's running around here somewhere, who is our press secretary, works very closely to try to make sure those stories get told. So the answer to the question, I tend to be long-winded as well, is yes, we are going to be doing some things, and you'll be hearing about those things and hopefully seeing those things in the next 5 to 6 months.
I do want to just say one thing real quick about the marketing for the school systems. I think part of the question was that.
Right.
You can start, I'll finish with whatever.
Because the school system right now does, highlights what's going on in the school and all the great things that are happening in our school. But once again, it's a matter of resources. The resources the school has to spend on marketing is limited because you're spending resources on classroom instruction. So while there are great things that happen, like the state of Maryland is #1 in education again for the 5th year in a row, the driver of that, quite honestly, is Prince George's County students, and that's right. We just had a number of our children who have tested very high on the SAT, but getting that out, requires resources beyond what the school can do. So part of what this new legislation will allow us to do is to really integrate the telling of our story. So just like we would do for a business, Whole Foods coming here or whoever's coming here, we will talk about that and we would do commercials. We need to do that about our schools and about what's going on. I tell people everywhere I go about the program at Suitland High School. I just think it's phenomenal. And having seen it firsthand as a parent and then watching our children go off to college, knowing how prepared they were, and the fact that some of the courses our kids took at Suitland High School, we actually paid $2,000 to Corcoran to teach. $2,000 would have cost us if we sent them to our child to Corcoran, but they were right here in Prince George's County. So we need to market and talk about all those great things that are going on so that more people take advantage of them and more people come in here. So what we're going to do is integrate, and we're starting to do some of that right now, is working with the communications office of the school system and the school board to make sure we're out here telling what great things our kids are doing and how many scholarships our kids are getting and how they're doing, so people know that when they're here are some really good things and why you should come to Prince George.
It's important to realize that, at least from the legislation point of view, we're trying to break down the wall between Prince George's County and Prince George's County Public Schools. So the story of Prince George's Public Schools should be the story of Prince George's County, good and bad. What happens good in Prince George's County Public Schools at Suitland or Fairmount Heights or Laurel should be a story the county executive tells when he's trying to recruit business in Las Vegas, trying to get some company to come back to Prince George's County. And vice versa. The story that the teachers and principals can tell about Prince George's County should not just be about what's happening inside of the school, but should be about the art district in Hyattsville and the recruitment of businesses to the county. Historically, and I think it's fair to say this, and this is why this new legislation provides an opportunity. Historically, we work together when there's events. So the county executive visits the school, the press release will go out from us, the press release will go out from the school system. That's the event. If there's a ribbon cutting or a graduation ceremony, or if there's a tragedy, if something happens at a location, a bus accident or whatever it may be, this legislation allows for us to work together in a way that we just haven't. So again, the story of Prince George's County encompasses our schools and not a separate island among themselves.
Yeah, let me just end with this. Because Christian just brought up a good point. I'll end this way. The superintendent, when they come in, or CEO, whoever that individual is, from the time that they come into Prince George's County, can no longer say that I don't know about the resources that are outside of the school system. That person's going to be a part of, come to our cabinet meetings. So they're going to know what economic development is going on in Prince George's County. They're going to know what's happening in public safety. They're going to know what's happening in healthcare. They're going to know where our DER has not, done code enforcement or is doing code enforcement. They're going to know all of those things that are going on in a government as a whole because it impacts their school system. So no longer can they say, well, I didn't know that there was no sidewalk over here when we changed the bus route. Or I didn't know you didn't shovel this place, but we're shoveling the parking lot to get ready for kids who can't get out of their driveway. Or we got them out of their driveway and they can't get into the parking lot at the school system. This is going to be one government. That much I can guarantee you. For as long as I'm county executive, this is now one government. We all going in the same direction. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure whoever that individual comes in here, that they just take off. Because if they don't take off, none of us taking off. We'll be doing another job. So every department, we said this, and this really would be the close of it. When we had, a rash of homicides in Prince George's County, we decided as a government that now everybody's into public safety. Whether you're healthcare, whether you're community resources, whatever your job is, you are now public safety. Everyone has a role in it. Because somewhere down the line, you're contributing whether we're safer or not safer. So if we don't make these numbers go down, it's your fault. Same thing with education. Everybody's now in the education business. They may have not been before. They may have signed up for communication, but guess what? They now in the education business. You need to figure out a way, every day you come to work, you think about how we improve the education system of Prince George's County, because I can't do my job unless it improves, or I won't have my job. Every day we're going to think about that. And if you don't believe that's the truth, after this meeting's over, is Glenda gone? There's a chief of staff out there. Ask her what the first thing I say in the morning. Because that's what we're about. Thank you, and thank you for coming out.
We also forgot, we apologize in their absence. The council did send their regrets that they were unable to be here this evening, but I know I see one representative from the council's office here. Not sure if anyone else has staff here, but they had another engagement, so they do send their regards. Christian's going to address some of those housekeeping items, and then we will open the floor for conversation.
So I'm not going to go through, I have 12, and we want to give more opportunity for you all to at least express to the county executive briefly any thoughts or ideas that we should be taking down as we interview. As the county executive looks for board members, many of which who probably are here tonight. And then also we have the search committee chair is here as well. And I think it's fair that her role today is listening to hear what the concerns and issues are. And that's part of the role that she will play in relaying that message to the candidates and ultimately sending to the county executive. But it's some specific questions that I think are important to ask about the structure moving forward. One, this is a simple question, but I think it's important. Can an employee of PGCPS with children in the district be appointed to the school board? And the answer to that is no. It's actually against state law for an employee to also be serving on the Board of Education. I will say that that is a law that has the ability to be looked at again. Throughout this legislative process, for example, there's a student member on the board. And the county executive endorsed very early on a couple major ideas. One is to look at, can we have an educator on the board? And if so, how do we do that? But that's law that has to be changed. But one thing that this legislation has proven is that the ability to change is there. Our legislators are savvy individuals that understand that the status quo is not what they want. And we have the ability to move. But I want to be clear on that. It's actually, you can't do it. So if you did apply, or you know someone to apply or interested in applying, you're an employee, that can't happen. However, that does not mean you cannot be engaged in the work that we're doing. There will be multiple opportunities, particularly after the county executive announces the choices for a board, where many of you all who will not, unfortunately, be not chosen or selected will have an opportunity to be engaged. I think with our employees, with interested parents who may not be chosen, with a number of business professionals, there's an opportunity there, and we'll make sure we have all your contact information for those that have applied. There's a couple things that says, describe the key implementations that will take place as a result of HB1107 that you view, or in this case, Mr. Baker views as an immediate positive impact on PGCPS that makes this overhaul successful. I think the biggest, and you've heard it tonight multiple times, is a collaboration with accountability. That's something that we've lacked in our system. I think we've had the ability to work together at many different opportunities, but the accountability on one side or the other, if that program worked or if that policy was implemented fully with fidelity, that's been lacking. So this allows the opportunity for collaboration with accountability. Now, some other key implementations, and one of the questions talks about how will this assist in unifying the hybrid board? And I think that question really rests in the individuals that are chosen to be on the Board of Education. As the executive said to the gentleman asked a question about being an independent voice, the goal of the legislation isn't for 4 people to walk in and say, I'm carrying what the county executive wants me to do. And as a person who sat down with the executive and understood his motives and ideas behind it, really the goal of this is to find the best people in Prince George's County that may not run for office because they don't want to deal with the politics. I mean, there's a number of individuals that we've seen throughout this entire process that say, you know what, I would get involved. I would be on the board. I have the qualifications that would put everybody to shame, but you know what? I don't feel like dealing with the politics. And that's a fair concern. So this allows people to have an opportunity. But the chair of the Board of Education will play a critical role in unifying. As you also know, and if you don't, I should have said this earlier, the legislation requires that the vice chair of the Board of Education come from the non-elected members. So it's not just two individuals that are appointed, but one of the vice chair, a member of leadership, has to be an elected member of the school board. And that was purposeful, not by the county executive. The legislature told us that. It said, you know what? The opportunity to work together, we're going to put it into law. So now a member of the non-elected members have to be vice chair, so they have to work together. And that's something that honestly is, I believe, an opportunity and not a liability if all individuals really come together with student interests at heart. And I think I'll answer this question, which is, when will the new board members be selected? This is really what happened. This is the goodness truth. We believed, and I was the person that was sitting down telling everybody, well, we're probably going to get about 40 applications. That's about it. I'm going to take vacation next week because we'll get about 40 applications. We'll read them all, give them to the county executive, and he'll be able to appoint. But the reality is that we had 160 applications that came in. And for many of you all, yes, a round of applause for that. And to be very frank, the applications are extremely good. You know, oftentimes when you do an open call, you get all kind of people interested. For example, when the board did open call for CEO or superintendent, they had about 46 people apply, many of which were principals and teachers or interested people that just saw that there was a job opening and think they can run a $1.7 billion business. But due process, and because the county executive particularly said that he did not want to just pick 3 people that he knew. He said he wanted a process to be open, an application that required about 8 pages of work. He also asked for members of the NAACP, the unions who were pro and against this legislation, and other individuals to serve on an internal review committee that were staffing to make sure that everybody of the big organizations saw, because there was a number of people pro and against. But the goal of this was not just to pick those who were in favor of the legislation and say, only you all get a chance to say something. So that's a long way of saying our goal is to go as close to June 1st as possible. The law becomes in effect on June 1st, and our goal is to get as close to that as possible. The Internal Review Committee will do their work. Mr. Jim Eastep is not here, but he's chairing that Internal Review Committee, and we're trying to push them through. But he told us just today that, Mr. Executive, I understand you want to get it done on June 1st, but we have 8 pages, we have 7 people, we have a process, and we're going to be true to that process. So as more information comes out about that, we'll definitely let you know, and the county executive ultimately will make this choice. The other part that's important is that the county council has a separate process. For the parents in the room or those that consider to want to be parents, they have a process, and I believe they will be making their decision as close to June 1st as possible as well. With that, Mr. Executive, if you don't mind, I wanted the opportunity to allow members in the audience to express 2 things, what their thoughts about how do we move forward, and I think more importantly for Dr. Dukes, are some of the qualities and interests that you have about a new CEO. While Dr. Dukes won't respond because her formal work doesn't begin on June 1st, the reality is that if we just wait till June 1st to listen, we're far behind. So if there's an opportunity for a couple minutes, if a couple individuals have some thoughts, if not, I know a number of you all by name, so I'll just point to you. But it may be an opportunity just for the county executive and Dr. Dukes to hear you. I'm not going to run around. So if we use our outside voice.
Prince George's County Public School parent and business owner. And my opinion, I'm reserving judgment. You acknowledge that it wasn't the best way to do it. I appreciate that. And I have great faith in Dr. Dukes just because, I've seen her work at Prince George's Community College from when she was not even, I guess you were vice president of the school and addressing issues. So, I do appreciate the fact that you have people around you who truly care. PG88 representative Christian, who's doing a good job. Who's probably one of the few people who I see in circles, and he's actually younger than I am, which is great. But one thing, in picking a person, they have to care about the students. They have to care about the parents. They have to care about the teachers. And I think that's one of those intangibles, beyond the 8 pages that I hope that we're able to pick up on. And I asked the question about the safe environment, and I understand the public safety component that you're pushing, but this is a school system, so I would love to have heard, and I would still like to hear, what are we going to do to help children deal with conflict? How to articulate, when they have a problem, because in this area, the metropolitan area has the highest level of suicide attempts, the lowest level of suicide, not successes, but suicide. And the reason is because it is determined that many times it's a cry for help. And unfortunately, many attempts go undocumented because they're seen as acts of violence, similar to a person pointing a toy gun at a police officer knowing they're going to shoot. Whether a person robs someone who's a known gang person in the community, gives away their stuff, all the same symptoms of a person who has experienced depression and considering suicide, but it's violence. And we begin to handle our students as violent offenders instead of as the babies that you are. So I would love to hear, what are we going to do to help our students do it?
Let me just answer care in health, because a lot of it has to do, those cry for helps have to do with our ability to understand, one, how do we deal with conflict resolution, which is really what the police department and the resource officers of the schools are working on, bringing in programs that they used to have when my son was young and in school. The other thing is the healthcare piece, because a lot of what happens in the classroom is just like you said, it's a cry for help or issues that need to be dealt with early on, but a lot of that has to do with the ability of counselors, social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists that we can actually make available and for parents and teachers to know if they're looking at the signs. So we're certainly going to look at that.
Baker, after this, about 75% of our homeowners in Prince George's County do not have kids in our school system. About 75%. So when you look at the numbers, the reality that our school system spends a whole bunch of time and energy on the 125,000 students that they have and the 25% of homeowners, the community part is normally lacking because there's 75% that's an untapped resource that we have to use. With that, I'll let Mr. Baker close, and then we'll thank you all for coming out tonight.
Closing. Thank you all for coming out tonight. No, I really appreciate it, and let's go make it better. Thank you.